let's proceed to the 7 institutional correction of the Philippines. So we have the New Bilibid Prison or NBP, San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. The third is Iwahig Penal Colony. The fourth is Correctional Institution for Women or CIW. And we have the Davao Penal Colony and the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm. And the last is the Leyte Regional Prison. So let me discuss about the New Bilibid Prison or the NBP. So the New Bilibid Prison in Muntinlupa, Metro Manila is the main insular penitentiary designed to house the prison population of the Philippines. So the New Bilibid Prison, it is the main penitentiary prisons which is designed to house prison in the Philippines. It is maintained by the Bureau of Corrections or BCOR under the Department of Justice. As of May 2018, the New Bilibid Prison housed 26,877 convicted criminals. So the New Bilibid Prison or the NBP was it is maintained by the Bureau of Corrections and under the watch of the Department of Justice. So in the year of 2018, the New Bilibid Prison it houses up to 26,877 convicted criminals. In 1940, prisoners were transferred to the New Bilibid Prison from the Old Bilibid Prison, also known as a Cárcel y Presidio, Correctional Spanish for Correctional Jail and Military Prison. In Manila, the remnants of the old facility was used by the City of Manila as its detention center, known today as Manila City Jail. So the prisoners from the old Bilibid prison in the year of 1940 were transferred to the new Bilibid prison. And also, in addition, the old Bilibid prison, also known as the Cárcel y Presidio, correctional for Spanish for correctional jail and military prison. The Manila in Manila, I mean. So the old facility in the old Bilibid prison was used by the City of Manila as its detention center and known as today as the Manila City Jail. The penitentiary had an initial land area of 551 hectares or 1,363 acres, but 140 hectares or 260 acres were transferred to a housing project of the Department of Justice. So the Bilibid prison have an initial land area of 551 hectares or up to 1,360 acres, but over 104 hectares or 260 acres were transferred or used by the Department of Justice as a housing project. So the additional land of the NBP or the New Bilibid Prison reservation is used for the Bureau of Corrections and Headquarters, and also the additional land area of the New Bilibid Prison, the reservation is actually used by the Bureau of Corrections as a headquarters. So as we can see here the picture, so we have the picture of the New Bilibid prison here. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines during the World War II, Bilibid was a prison of a war and civilian internee camp where American soldiers and civilians were held by the Japanese. 1,200 internees and POWs were freed by the American Army of February 4, 1945 during the Battle of Manila. So, during the time of the Haneng occupation sa mga Japanese during the World War II, the Bilibid was actually a prisoners for war for every soldiers were caught, and civilian internee were caught in internee camp were American soldiers, and also civilians were held by the Japanese, and over 1,200 internees and POWs were freed by the American, meaning freed. They were released back to the community by the time of the American regime. So in the year of February 4, 1945, during the Battle of the Manila. The government of the Philippines plans to create a regional prison in Nueva Ecija through public-private partnership. The old Bilibid prison, then known as Cárcel y Presidio Correccional, Spanish correctional jail and military prison, occupied a rectangular piece of land that was part of the Mayhalik estate in the heart of Manila. So the government during the sa time sa mga American and the war between the American and the Spanish, the Philippine government they plan to create the regional prison in Nueva Ecija through the through a public-private partnership. And also the old Bilibid prison, also known as a Cárcel y Presidio or the Correctional or Spanish Correctional Jail and Military Prison, were also occupied as a rectangular piece of land that was part of the Mayhalik estate in the heart of Manila. The old prison was established by the Spanish colonial government on June 25, 1865 via royal decree. It is divided into two sections, the carcel, which could accommodate 600 inmates, and the presidio, which could hold 527 prisoners. So, it stated here that the old Bilibid prison was built or was established by during the Spanish colonial during the Spanish colonial government in the year of June 25, 1865 via royal decree. So the old Bilibid prison, or also known as the Cárcel y Presidio, it was divided into two sections, which is the carcel. The carcel, it can accommodate up to 600 inmates, and while the presidio, which can also accommodate 527 prisoners. So we can ma-observe na to nga mas dako og ma-accommodate ang carcel kaysa presidio. So let's proceed to the next correctional institutions in the Philippines, which is the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm. According to historical accounts, the San Ramon Prison was established in southern Zamboanga on August 21, 1870, through royal decree promulgated in 1869. Established during the tenure of Governor General Ramon Blanco, whose patron saint the prison was named after. The facility was originally established for persons convicted of political crimes. So, aning San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm, it was established actually in the southern Zamboanga in the year of August 21, 1870. Through a royal decree promulgated in the year of 1869. And also the kaning San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm, it was established during the term or the overwatch of tenure Governor General Ramon Blanco, whose patrol saint in the prison was named after. So the kanina facility, it was originally established for person kaning San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm is only it can only confine those who were convicted as a political crimes. So kaning San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm mo ni siya kaning prisuhanan ni para ranis mga tawo nga they have political connections or they have political crimes. So kaning San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm, they only accept prisoners or those who were convicted as a political crimes. So let's proceed. So considered kaning San Ramon Prison considered the oldest penal facility in the country. Prisoners in San Ramon were required to do agricultural work. During the Spanish and American War, in 1898, the prisoners in San Ramon were hastily released and the buildings destroyed. In 1907, the American administration reestablished the prison farm. In 1912, General John Pershing, or the chief executive of the Department of the Mindanao and Sulu, classified the institution as a prison and penal colony, and therein confined people sentenced by the courts under his jurisdiction. So this San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm were also known as the oldest penal facility in the Philippines. And also during the Spanish and the American War in the year of 1898, this San Ramon prison were the prisoners in San Ramon were freed, or meaning they were hastily released because the San Ramon prison were destroyed because of the battle between the Spanish and the American. So the American in the year of 1907, the American administration ilang re-established the prison farm in the year of 1912 in the year of 1912 under the term of General John Pershing, or the chief executive of the Department of Mindanao and Sulu. He classified the institution as a prison and penal colony, therein confined people sentenced by the courts under his jurisdictions. So, under Pershing's supervisions, several buildings with a capacity for 600 prisoners were constructed. After several years, the colony became practically self-supporting with 75,000 coconut trees, which were planted at the beginning of Pershing's administrations. Contributing to the colony's self-sufficiency, aside from coconuts, rice, corn, papaya, and other crops were also cultivated. So, during the term, or during the supervision of the Pershings, more several buildings were constructed that can capacity, or that can cater more than 600 prisoners. And after the several years, many several years the colony became more practically self-supporting. They plant over 75,000 coconut trees in the land area, which were planted at the beginning of Pershing administration. So, the colonies, or the administration of Pershing, it became more important, or it contributed it contributing the colony's self-sufficiency. So they in San Ramon prison, during the supervision of Pershing, they plant more they plant more crops like coconuts, rice, corn, papaya, and more crops were also cultivated in the land of the in the institution during the Pershing administration. So on November 1, 1905, Reorganization Act of number 1407 was approved, creating the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Commerce and Police, integrating the old Bilibid Prison, San Ramon Penal Colony, and Iwahig Penal. Excuse me. So in the year of November 1, 1905, they reorganized the Act number 1407, and approved creating the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Commerce and Police. And it includes the Old Bilibid Prison, San Ramon Penal, and San Ramon Penal Colony, and the Iwahig Penal. The Philippine Coconut Authority took over management of the coconut farm from San Ramon in the year of 1985. Congresswoman Maria Clara Lobregat proposed the transfer of San Ramon Prison to Bongyao Town in the mountainous area of Zamboanga to give way to special economic zone. So, during the Philippine Coconut Authority, they took over the management of the coconut farm of San Ramon in the year of 1995. And also Maria Clara, the congresswoman, she proposed to transfer the San Ramon prison to the Bongyao town, which is the mountainous area of the Zamboanga, in order to give away, or to give way to special economic zone. So let's proceed to the Iwahig Penal Colony. This facility was established during the American occupation. It was, however, during the Spanish regime that Puerto Princesa was designated as a place where offenders sentenced to banishment were exiled. A specific area of Puerto Princesa was selected as a site for a correctional facility. So the Iwahig Penal Colony was established during the American occupation, but during the Spanish regime, the main the Puerto Princesa was the selected place or designated place where those the criminal offender were sentenced to banishment were exiled. So katong mga nasentensyahan og banishment, dito na sila, aning mga prisoners nga nasentensyahan og banishment, dire na sila sa Puerto Princesa i-confined. And also the part of the Puerto Princesa was also selected as the site of the correctional facility. The American military carved out a prison facility in the rainforest of Puerto Princesa. The institution had for its first superintendent Lieutenant George Wolfe, a member of the U.S. Expeditionary Force, who later became the first prisons director. So during the American occupation, they started the American military. They started or build or constructed a facility in the rainforest part of the Puerto Princesa. And it was supervision or overwatched by the Superintendent Lieutenant George Volpe, a member of the U.S. Expeditionary Force, and also who later became the first prisons director in the Puerto Princesa, or in the facility of the Puerto Princesa. Governor Luke Wright authorized the establishment of a penal colony in the province of Palawan on November 16, 1904. This penal settlement, which originally comprised an area of 22 acres, were originally served as a dispository for prisoners who could be not accommodate at the Bilibid prison in Manila. So this Governor Luke Wright, he authorized the establishment of a penal colony in the province of Palawan in the year of 1904. And the penal settlement, which originally comprised the area of 22 acres, was originally served as this depository for prisoners that cannot accommodate at the Bilibid, or that who could not accommodate prisoners from the Bilibid prison in Manila. In the year of 1906, however, the Department of Commerce and Police, which later became the Department of Public Instruction, moved to turn the instruction into the center of penal colony, supervised in accordance with the trends at the time. Through the department efforts, the Philippine Commission of the United States government passed Act No. 1723 in the 1907, classifying the settlement as penal institution. So in the year of 1906, the Department of Commerce and the Police, which became later as the Department of Public Instruction, and they moved to turn the institution into the center of the penal colony to supervise in accordance with trends at the time. And because of the efforts of the Philippine Commissions, because of the efforts of the department, the Philippine Commission of the United States government approved or passed the Act No. 1723 in the year of 1907, that classifying the settlement as a penal institution. So the settlement was at first beset by attempted escape, but under the supervision of the Colonel John R. White of the People Constabulary, who would become superintendent of Iwahig in 1906, the colony became successful settlement. So when the settlement was at first beset in the Iwahig Penal Colony in the Puerto Princesa, it was there were more attempted escapes coming from the prisoners. But when the time comes, when the time of the Colonel John R. White, or the time of the supervision of the Colonel John R. White of the Philippines Constabulary, who would become a superintendent of Iwahig in the year of 1906, the colony or the facility or the corrections facility became more a successful settlement. So next is the merit system was derived for the prisoners, and vocational activities were offered. This include farming, fishing, forestry, carpentry, and hospital paramedical work. prisons could choose the vocational activities they wanted. So in a Wahig Penal Colony, they produce or they introduce an every vocational activities inside the facility. This include farming, fishing, and forestry, carpentry, and hospital para medical work. The prisoners, they've been given a chance to choose what they want to work or what they want vocational activities they wanted, either fishing, forestry, carpentry, and also hospital paramedical. These activities as very important or very beneficial, especially from our or especially to every criminal offenders or every prisoners in the facility. In 1955, Administrative Order number 20 was promulgated by the President and implemented by the Secretary of Justice and Secretary of Agriculture and Natural Resources. This order allowed the distribution of colony lands for cultivation by deserving colonies. The order also contained a list of qualifications for colonies who wish to apply for a lot to cultivate, the conditions for settlers stay in his land, loan requirements or marketings of the settlers produced lots granted did not exceed in 6 hectares. So as I have read earlier, let me back fun. So the administration na order number 25, they approve the important personalities in the government approve, like for example the president, the secretary of justice, the secretary of agriculture and natural resources. They approved or they ordered and they allowed the distribution of colony lands for every facility in the Iwahig Penal Colony for every prisoners in order for them to cultivate or in order to proceed their kuan kanang ilang vocational activities like the fishing, planting, and etc. And this type of vocational activities, it was for the kaning para sa mga deserving colonies or sa mga prisoners nga ganahan gud kaayo mo participate this type of activities or these vocational activities. So as I have said earlier, the important of government in the Philippines, they provide, they approve the kuan, but there are also conditions, like for example they need to stay in his land. For every settlers, the condition for every settler is staying in his land, loan requirements and marketing of the settlers produced, and also lots granted did not exceed out of 6 hectares. On August 16, 1959, a committee was created by President Carlo P. Garcia to study the state of national prisons. Accordingly, prisoners in Iwahig were divided into two groups, the settlers and colonies. The settlers are those engaged in farming for their own benefit. There are ones whose application for land to cultivate have been approved. So, the Iwahig Penal Colony were actually divided into two groups, which is the settlers and the colonies. So ang settlers, these are the peoples or these are the prisoners who were participating or engaging in vocational activities like farming, fishing, like fishing, where these activities were approved by the highest personalities in the government. So the government furnishes the land and initial requirements for tools, dwellings, and beasts for burden. So meaning the government also providing tools and materials for every prisoners who were participating in vocational activities. They are required to reimburse expenditures incurred for their maintenance and that of their families out of products of their families. Upon their release from the colony, they receive whatever amount of money they have credited in their favor after deducting the obligations they have. So meaning, sa panahon nga nagtrabaho sila sa inside the Iwahig Penal Colony during sa pag-participate nila sa vocational activities, naa sila na-earned ato. Murag naipon ilang na-earned ato nga money, which is before sa pag-abot sa panahon nga ma-release na sila, they can receive any amount of money. Depende sa ilang ginatrabaho sa sulod sa facility, and depende po sa participation nila sa vocational activities, or depende sa ilang gipili nga vocational activities, which is the farming, cultivating crops, fishing, and carpentry, and etc. Iwahig is divided into 4 zones or districts. Central Subcolony with an area of 14,700 hectares, and Santa Lucia with 9,685 hectares, Montebol with 8,000 hectares, and Inawagan with 13,000 hectares. Recent developments and presidential proclamations have dramatically reduced the size of prisons reservation of Iwahig. So, the Iwahig daw, or the Iwahig Penal Colony, or the Iwahig facility was divided into four zones or districts, which is this Central Subcolony with a capacity area of 14,700 hectares, and Santa Lucia with a capacity of 9,685 hectares, and Montebol with the maximum of 8,000 hectares, and the Inawagan which 13,000 hectares. So let's proceed to the Correctional Institution for Women, or CIW. So in a report dated January 22, 1959, submitted to a committee created by Administrative Order number 287 by the President of the Philippines, it was noted that before a separate building was constructed, especially for women, all female convicts were confined on the old Bilibid prison as Caragas, Santa Manila. The male prisoners were confined in dormitories near the women quarters. Because of the vocational activities of the women, prisoners were limited to embroidery. When they became ill, the women were confined in the separate building, which served as a hospital with nurses, prisoners, physicians. When women prisoners needed surgery, they were operated on at the Bilibid prison. So, during the construction of the CIW, kaning mga female prison were confined in the old Bilibid prison. Where naapoy mga male prisoners, but they are separated in different facilities, which is lain ilang condition dito murag lisod ba, and ilang vocational activities for women dili kwan kayo ng dili makapagusto, or limited sila to embroidery. So when the time if there's someone prisoners became ill, and the women were confined to a separate building which served as hospital nurses and also prison physicians. And when the women prisoners needed surgery, they were also operated on at the Bilibid prison. After the operation, they were transferred to the infirmary for convalescence. Prison authorities were aware of the conditions that the women prisoners had to endure. Consequently, the transfer of the women to a separate site became inevitable. After a series of negotiations started by Prisons Director Ramon Victorio, the Philippine legislature passed Republic Act number 3579 in November 1959. It authorized that the transfer of all women inmates to a building in Welfare Valley at Mandaluyong, Rizal appropriate over 60,000 for the move. On February 14, 1931, the women prisoners were transferred from the old Bilibid prison, and the building specially constructed for them, its old name, Women Prisons, was changed to Correctional Institution for Women. This was in keeping with emerging trends in penology, which emphasized correction rather than punishment. Convicts were brought back into the social mainstream, adjusted and rehabilitated with a better outlook in life. So in the year of February 14 in 1931, the women prisoners in the old Bilibid prison were transferred into the building were constructed for them. It is the women prison and was renamed today and also known now is the Correctional Institution for Women. The CIW, or the Correctional Institution for Women, according to a Senate report, occupied 18 hectares. The original structure was one-story building which housed the office, the brigades, mess halls, kitchen, chapel, infirmary, bathrooms, and employees' restrooms. The building has a central courtyard with trees, flowering plants. The prisoners' vocational activities were expanded to include poultry, the piggery, as well as cultivation of crops, flowers, and fruits. So the correctional institution for women, before the kaning nahuman na ang facility, the original facility, it can occupy 18 hectares, I mean. And the original structure was naa sila they are available building, many buildings which houses the office, the brigades, mess hall, kitchen, chapel, infirmary, bathrooms, and employees restrooms. So, and also the prisoners, and also the CIW, the Correctional Institution for Women, they also added activities or vocational activities, like it included the poultry, piggery, as well as the cultivation of crops, flowers, and fruits. Living quarters for the institution's employees were later constructed in the compound. During the Japanese occupation, the CIW, despite a drastic reduction in the number of its employees, continued with its work. A male number of military prisoners were also confined in the institution. They were later freed by the U.S. Army. So, during the ng living quarters, more living quarters of institutions where employees were later constructed. So, more na mga buildings or facilities para sa mga employees sa CIW, or Correctional Institution for Women, were more constructed in the compound. And also, during the Japanese occupation, the CIW, despite sa mga continued reduction sa mga number sa mga nagtrabaho or mga employees sa CIW, nag-continue ra gyapon ang CIW nagtrabaho o nag-facilitate or nag-accommodate sa mga prisoners, especially for women. And a number of female military prisoners were also confined in the institution. So, in the sa Japanese occupation, there were more military female prisoners were confined in the institutions. During the sa American occupation, the U.S. Army, they released or freed the female military prisoners in the Correctional Institution for Women. So after the war of CIW, or Correctional Institution for Women, they resumed its normal operations. They provide weekly catechism in classes in the facility, in the correction institutions for women, which is this catechism classes, in addition, this is muna siya mga religious study, murag mag-provide sila religious study. And dental clinic was built. They built a dental clinic in the correctional institutions for women, and also local telephones were installed in the guards and quarters. The Bureau of Public Works made major repairs on the main building, and a workshop and infirmary were constructed for the inmates' use. The infirmary during the time could accommodate around 16 patients. So, with the help of the Bureau of Public Works, they build more. They repair more buildings and workshops, infirmary. This type of health center, like health center. They build more infirmary were constructed in the inmates' use. The infirmary built by the Bureau of Public Works can accommodate around 16 patients. In 2000, a new four-story building was constructed by the Department of Public Works within the ground of CIW. It is the growing congestion in the facility. The CIW, with a capacity for only 200 inmates, had to accommodate 1,000 inmates. So, because of the participation of the department, or because of the help of the Department of Public Works, in the CIW, there were more buildings were constructed, and it was growing, and the CIW with the ang Correctional Institution for Women na siya original nga capacity for only 200 inmates. But because of the help of the Department of the Public Works, kuan sa mga tungod sa tabang nila na nakabuild og more building and facility, the current CIW, the current they can accommodate is 1,000 inmates. So let's proceed to the Davao Penal Colony. So the Davao Penal Colony is the first penal settlement founded and organized under the Filipino administration. The settlement, which originally had an area of approximately 30,000 hectares in the district of Panabo and Tagum. Davao del Norte was formally established on January 21, 1932 by virtue of Act number 3732. So this Davao Penal Colony is the first, it was considered the first penal settlement founded and organized by under the Filipino administration. And this this colony, or this Davao Penal Colony, have an area or approximately or have a maximum land area of 30,000 hectares in the districts of Panabo and Tagum. And also, the Davao Penal Colony was actually formally established on the Davao del Norte was formally established on January 21 in the year of 1932 by virtue of Act number 3732. So this act authorized the Governor General to lease or sell lands, buildings, and improvements in San Ramon Prison and Iwahig Penal Colony. So the Act number 3732, it authorized the Governor General to lease or sell the lands, buildings, and improvements improvements of San Ramon Prison and Iwahig Penal Colony. It also granted authority to the Secretary of Justice to establish a new prison and penal colony in a suitable public land. And it was this act, it was allocated a budget of 500,000 pesos. Several committees were created to pick a suitable site for the penal settlement. In accordance with the recommendations of these committees, Governor Dwight Davis signed Proclamation number 414 on October 7, 1931, which reserved sites for the penal colony in Davao Province in Mindanao. The sites offered ideal conditions for agricultural activities. So Mr. Governor Dwight Davis, he signed the Proclamation number 414 on October 7, 1931, in order to reserve the site for the penal colony in Davao Province in Mindanao, and also to offer the ideal conditions for agricultural activities. So during World War II, the colony was converted into a concentration camp where more than 1,000 Japanese internees were committed by the Philippines American Armed Forces. The Japanese were treated in accordance with the orders of the American commanding officers. So on November 20, 1941, the Japanese Imperial Forces attacked Davao, and colony was among establishments taken over by the invading army. The entire settlement was thrown into confusion, and a great number of prisoners escaped. So in the day of December 21, in the year of December 20, 1941, the Japanese Imperial Forces, they attacked the Davao and colony, and also they invade them using their forces or army. And that's why it causes a lot of trouble from the Davao colony. Like, for example, the entire settlement in the Davao was thrown into confusion, and a great number of the prisoners in Davao Penal Colony were escaped because of the Japanese attack or invade. Because of the Japanese Imperial Forces attack in Davao and the colony. Normal operations were inevitably disturbed. In November 8, 1942, a representative of the Director of Prisons transferred the colony and its properties to the Japanese authorities. The remaining colony employees, their families, and the inmates evacuated to Iwahig, where they organized the Davao Penal Colony at Inagawan Subcolony, Palawan. The organization of the colony in exile was authorized by virtue of Memorandum Order Number 60 dated June 28 in the year of 1943 and signed by the Director of Prison. So during the invading of the Japanese forces in the Davao, the remaining employees, their families and inmates are evacuated to Iwahig, where they came from the Davao Penal, which is invaded by the Japanese forces. The organization of the colony, and the exile was authorized by the virtue of memorandum, the order number 60 dated June 28, 1943 and signed by the director of the prisons. After the liberation of the Philippines, the colony in exile in Palawan returned to its old site in Davao. A great deal of rebuilding and repair had to be done because the war had almost completely destroyed the colony. So before the war between the Japanese and the American, so the Davao Penal Colony had almost na destroyed, or had almost completely destroyed because of the causes of the battlefield or the battle between the Spanish and American, and also the invading Japanese forces in Davao. So next is Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm. So nearer to the Manila than other penal colonies, the Sablayan Penal Colony is located in Occidental Mindoro and relatively new. So this Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm was considered as the nearer or pinakaduol sa Manila than other sa kumpara sa uban nga mga penal colonies. And it is located in Occidental Mindoro and relatively new. Established on September 26, 1954 by virtue of Presidential Proclamation Number 72, the penal colony has a total land area of approximately 16,190 hectares. So this Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm had a total land area of over 16,190 hectares. Prison records show that the first colonies and employees arrived in Sablay in January 15, 1955. Since then, several buildings have been constructed, including the colony's dormitories, employees' quarters, guardhouse, schoolhouse, chapel, recreation hall, and post exchange. Three sub-colonies were later organized. One is a reservation which this day remains part of the protected rainforest. Another is the coastal area. The third was used by the national government as a relocation site for refugees from the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in 1981. Sablayan Prison is a facility where the prisoners from the New Bilibid Prison are brought for the congestion purposes. It follows the same colony standard as the other penal farm. So the Sablayan Prison, based on this statement, the Sablayan Prison daw or have three sub-colonies were later were organized, which is this. The one is the reservation, with its day remains part of the protected rainforest. The second is the coastal areas, and the third is the national government used as a relocation site for refugees during the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the year 1991. And also the Sablayan Prison is a facility where prisoners from NBP or the New Bilibid prisoners are brought to the Sablayan Prison because of the purposes of the congestion. It follows the same colony standards as other penal farm. So let's proceed to the Leyte Regional Prison, which is the last institutional corrections of the Philippines. So the Leyte Regional Prison, situated in Aboyog, Southern Leyte, was established a year after the declaration of martial law in the year of 1972 by virtue of the Presidential Decree number 28. So this Leyte Regional Prison situated niya sa Aboyog in the area of Southern Leyte. And it was also established the year after the declaration of martial law, meaning na timing niya pag-establish in the year and in the declaration of martial law in the year of 1972 under the virtue of the Presidential Decree number 28. While its plantilla and institutional plan were almost ideal, lack of funds made the prison unable to realize its full potential, and its facilities are often below compared with those of other established penal farms. So the Leyte Regional Prison has an inmate capacity of 500. It follows the same agricultural format as the main correctional program in addition to some rehabilitation activities. So this Leyte Regional Prison has a maximum capacity of 500. It can cater of inmates capacity of 500, and this Leyte Regional Prison had also kuan ni siya napo ni siya yung mga land area para sa mga agricultural activities inside in the Leyte Regional Prison. So the prison admits convicted offender from Region 6 and from the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa. So as I have discussed earlier, the 7 institutional corrections of the Philippines, so which is the New Bilibid Prison, NBP, San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm, Iwahig Penal Colony, Correctional Institution for Women or CIW, Davao Penal Colony, Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm, and the lastly is the Leyte Regional Prison. So these are the 7 institutional corrections of the Philippines, or the most famous or most well-known and famous corrections or institutional corrections in the Philippines for every prisoners.